Greetings, dear viewers. I am George from Ireland, and this video is about Donald Trump's long-awaited state visit, which has just ended. Well, the long-watched-for day came when he actually accepted the invitation. Remember, within days of his inauguration, Theresa May had flown to Washington, D.C., and she said that Her Majesty the Queen had invited Donald Trump on a state visit, which is, of course, the supreme expression of amity between two nation states. And the United Kingdom only issues such invitations when it is certain that will be accepted. So that was obviously cleared in advance. Having accepted it, he then appeared to reject it because he didn't like the new siting of the US Embassy, which he then lyingly blamed on Obama. Of course, George W. Bush had made the decision, but obviously it was the height of bad manners for him to reject it, having once accepted it, but that's just typical for Trump. Anyway, finally, about 2 years after he was expected, he actually rocked up. It was just in trademark Trump style by publicly insulting his hosts before he'd even touched down, saying that Meghan Markle was nasty, then lying that he'd said that despite it being recorded. So yet another flagrant lie, one of over 10,000 lies or misleading statements recorded by the Washington Post, which President Trump has told on record. How many has he told off the scenes? We just don't even know. It's the tip of the iceberg. So it might have been a slightly gauche moment for the royal family if Trump had reminded them how he had told a journalist, again on the record, that he would like to have sexual intercourse with Princess Diana, but would first of all insist that she have an AIDS test. It might have been a trifle awkward with her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, and indeed her ex-husband, Prince Charles. And you know how so many Americans hyper-react to any hint of interference in their domestic affairs. Like, it's our country, get out, you can't tell us what to do. And of course, Trump weighed in to domestic British politics, getting himself into a public row with Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London. Remember, he's a Muslim, he's a British Pakistani, and Trump, he's got his Muslim ban. Well, he said he might make an exception for Sadiq Khan. Sadiq Khan does not want to be anybody's exception. So Sadiq Khan obviously allowed this anti-Trump balloon to be displayed, this showing him as the petulant toddler that he is. Now, Trump was very miffed about that. Trump, the man who demands free expression, but not if it's against him. Now, Sadiq Khan could only forbid that balloon from flying on the grounds of public safety, and he decided there was no public safety reason not to allow it. So, of course, it went ahead. And that's something for Trumpsters to remember. Often they're free speech warriors. But when it's an expression of opinion they don't like, some of them go apoplectic about it. So Trump thought nothing of offering his opinion on Boris Johnson. He opined about Nigel Farage and so on. So yet another blatant interference in the domestic politics of the United Kingdom. If a British politician did the same in the United States, especially speaking up for one of his opponents, I think you can imagine the reaction. So who says that Trump opposes interference in elections? Because he interferes in elections. Remember, the Conservative Party is in the throes of a leadership contest. Theresa May has formally resigned as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party, is staying on only in a caretaker capacity until such time as a successor is elected by the Conservative Party, which will happen in several weeks, and that person will also become Prime Minister. So Trump comported himself with his characteristic complete lack of decorum, but he is at least wowed by the Queen. He didn't commit the terrible faux pas he did before, like of walking in front of her and things like that. Now, the Queen has met 11 US presidents before Trump, and all of them have behaved flawlessly. Nobody said they put a word wrong. Trump alone disgraced himself and his country. But he does appear to be awestruck by the Queen. Meeting her seems to caress his ego. Now, anyone can read him like a book, and it's very easy to press his psychological buttons. Flattery works well with him. He's just such a lamb to the slaughter on that one. So he was received with the pageantry and pomp that he has grown accustomed to, and of course it worked wonders for his very brittle sense of self-worth. So there was obviously the landing at the airbase, then going by Marine One to Winfield House. That's the US ambassador's residence in Regent's Park, London. Now, Winfield House used to belong to Barbara Hutton. You may have seen the film about a poor little rich girl, the heir to the Woolworth dynasty, and then she donated it to the United States in a typical act of liberality. So, because he was in Winfield House, rather than staying at Buckingham Palace, which other US presidents have done, in a way that's easier for the British because obviously his security is completely America's responsibility because Britons can't even go into Winfield House unless they're invited. Obviously, outside Winfield House, there was the Ring of Steel. So it managed not to be too disruptive to Londoners, and I'm in London right now, not having to block the traffic for him. I would prefer if more world leaders went by helicopter and don't block the traffic. So obviously met by VIPs at the airport. He spent a lot of time with Prince Andrew, who's was the UK's roving ambassador for trade. Not so much with Prince Charles, because the Prince of Wales, that's Charles, he's outspoken in believing in climate change being real and must be addressed. So later there came the state dinner, and this banquet is the highlight of the state visit. And there are 150 guests. So they pair off. There'll be 75 gentlemen, 75 ladies, and a lady must walk beside a gentleman, and they'll deliberately mix the nationalities. An American will be walking beside a Britisher, and there should be someone of equal status, as in the Queen beside Donald Trump, and the Prince of Wales beside the First Lady. Now, Prince Philip, that's the Queen's husband, he retired from public duties a couple of years ago. He's 97 years old, no, 98 years old. He said he will occasionally attend things if he really wants to, but he'd really rather just relax. So that's why he wasn't there. So Prince Charles had to stand in as his mother's male consort. And Prince Charles's wife is the Duchess of Cornwall, better known as Camilla Parker Bowles. So she was there and on and on. And Her Royal Highness, Princess Kate, was there. Really, she's not Princess Kate. You should say Princess William, because she wasn't born a princess. She's meant to take her husband's Christian name. Princess William might seem ridiculous, but that is if you're being a stickler for these things. Anyway, we know her as Kate Middleton. She was beside Steve Mnuchin, the US Treasury Secretary, and on and on. So there's a white tie dinner, and there are plenty of liveried servants in the background. And the menu is announced. They never seem to eat very much. The royal family might is they're all slim. Because it's difficult to have a great deal of respect for someone who's obese. So even though they have the most delectable fare served up by exceptionally gifted chefs, they strive to keep their consumption of comestibles to an absolute minimum. Otherwise, it'd be very easy to balloon. And wine is served, but Trump doesn't drink. So I think maybe they didn't serve wine to anyone on this occasion. And their speeches. Remember, Her Britannic Majesty never speaks for more than 6 minutes, makes speeches brief, and people might actually listen. And then Trump replies. Obviously, the speeches are written, they're shown to each other in advance and cleared with each other's teams, so there's nothing in there that anyone would take umbrage at. So the Queen, she dropped hints, she emphasized the importance of the transatlantic alliance and so on. She paid compliments to the United States. She stressed the importance of maintaining the international order and respecting global organizations and so on. All lessons that they want Trump to take on board, and he probably won't take it from anybody else but her. Now, probably in one ear and out the other. No doubt tomorrow he'll be raving about how international organizations are dreadful and let's just shred another treaty. So he was trying to emphasize solidarity on various issues. So there were various minefields that were avoided. Was the Huawei issue going to flare up? Remember, that's the Chinese telecommunications company, which is a market leader in artificial intelligence in global cities. Now, the United States is very against it. Remember the Huawei heiress. She's in Canada right now. She was arrested. She's facing extradition to the United States. Supposedly, she's assisted Iran in sanctions busting. The Chinese are taking it very badly, have arrested various Canadian people on trumped-up charges. It's a tit for tat. There are no coincidences in China because the government doesn't do justice. It's just vengeance. It's just power politics. And obviously Canada is obliged to do this because they have an extradition treaty with the United States, and the US has requested this woman's extradition. Meng Feng, as her name, if I got that right. Anyway, the US is buying its G5 system from Huawei, and the United States is lobbying very hard against it, saying they're going to spy on you. Only last year, the Chinese legislature passed a law saying that Chinese companies are obliged to assist in espionage abroad. They said it in broad daylight, and yet the United Kingdom is moronic enough to buy such a system, which would clearly be a trap door. And several other countries are refusing to do so, rightly. People say to me, you don't think that Google does the same? Maybe it does, I don't know. But I mean, the US, however ill-intentioned it is, they're not a totalitarian system. It's not as bad as the People's Republic of China. I don't think they mean harm to the United Kingdom. So Trump, in his usual way, flip-flopped on the National Health Service, that it must be open as part of a Brexit deal or it must not, contradicting himself flatly. How can anyone have a modicum of respect for this guy who can't make his mind up on an issue like that? It's ludicrous. So why would the NHS be on the table? That's a publicly funded healthcare system which is extraordinarily popular in the UK amongst people of all political persuasions. Yes, not everybody supports it, but the opposition to it is minimal. So in what sense be on the table? Private health insurance? There are private health insurance companies here anyway. Private hospitals. I've been to private clinics. American health insurance companies that want to set up here, they can. Nobody's stopping them. But obviously most people want to use the NHS for all sorts of reasons. It's superb and it's free of charge, having paid your tax. So Theresa May is on the way out, as I said. And so he didn't have a great deal of respect for her, because obviously she failed to get the Brexit vote through thrice. Was defeated by over 258 votes way back in, I think it was January, but they got it down to be defeated by about 58 votes more recently. So it was a major improvement. And Theresa was hoping with one more push, she might get over the line. If she could get 30 people to change their mind, it would pass. Or even some people to change their minds and some simply to abstain. But it wasn't to be. It didn't quite happen. So Theresa May obviously spent some time with him, and her husband, Philip May, he hosted a garden party in Downing Street. Remember, number 10 Downing Street is the official residence of the British Prime Minister. And he was there with his opposite number, Melania Trump. So it's a children's party because Melania Trump is much more comfortable in the company of children. They were the children of American diplomats and Downing Street staff. So that was that. He's quite unspectacular, Philip May, bland, almost like the female version of a peacock, not to distract from his wife, although she's rather understated and banal as well. But some people then that's good, serious about getting on with the job, not a show woman. So anyway, there were huge anti-Trump rallies, which Trump claimed scarcely existed. Then they went to Portsmouth, from where the D-Day flotilla set off, and they went to Normandy as well. Is that an extension is that an admission that it's English territory? Remember, of course, the Duke of Normandy, in 1066, he conquered England, and his descendants are the monarchs of the United Kingdom. And the Normandy was ruled by the King of England for a long time. Or put it another way, England was ruled by the Duke of Normandy for a long time. So they were politically connected. Obviously, the English completely lost it centuries ago. Lost it in the about 1453. Anyway, when they went, it was not the actual day of D-Day, which was the 6th of June. They went the 4th of June. George III's birthday, incidentally. So that was that. And then President Trump went to the Republic of Ireland, and he managed to screw up spectacularly, saying precisely the wrong thing. There he was with An Taoiseach, as in the Prime Minister of the Republic of Ireland, Dr. Leo Varadkar. So Trump was saying, okay, obviously Brexit is going to be a border in Ireland. Well, there already is a border in Ireland, but because the Republic of Ireland and the UK were both in the EU, therefore it's a completely porous border and there are almost never any checks. It's a frictionless border of people, goods, services, and capital going back and forth. But with Brexit, that might change. All the bets are off. And Trump was saying, well, fantastic, you build a border wall, like we're going to build a border wall. It was precisely the wrong way to go. I mean, well done. He really outdid himself. He excelled himself in being completely undiplomatic. Ireland really is now united against that idea of a border wall. People of all shades of opinion, nationalists, post-nationalists, Republicans, loyalists, unionists, they don't want a hard border, all right? A lot of the unionists want to stay fully integrated with the UK, not have regulatory alignment with the EU, but they don't want a hard border. Now they've been told, well, you can have one, you maybe have the other, but you can't have both. But even if they do want a hard border, they don't want a wall, a fence. Nobody's proposed that. That's moronic. Even in the dark days of the Trouble, I don't recall anyone saying there should be a wall along the frontier. So, and by the way, his wall is not being built in the United States. Another massive lie, which would be a fence, and he's obviously going to fraction the funding he needs. And they don't own the most of the land. It's owned by state governments. It's owned by private individuals. It's owned by companies. So, and Congress wouldn't vote for it. So, it was just another whopper of a lie. It was stunningly stupid. It was hideously offensive, and Dr. Varadkar did well to conceal his contempt for Trump, wading into another domestic issue, really putting his foot in his mouth. I mean, Trump has so lost his marbles. It's flagrant, his early stage Alzheimer's. No, I'm not a physician. I don't need to be a doctor to diagnose a common cold. All right. I don't need to be a doctor to say I know what blood is. I don't need to be a doctor to tell when somebody's senile. All right. I can't diagnose it such that it would be accepted legally. But when it's that blatant, when he's constantly behaving like this, when he's emotionally incontinent, when he's got this verbal diarrhea, coming out with all this completely inapposite verbiage, it's a blatant to me what he is. He is a man who is increasingly losing his cognitive functions. There's some mental decline in all people in their 70s, but in Trump, the case is particularly obvious to see how he's disoriented, he hates stares, he's snarling, he has this explosive temper, he's displaying volatility of all kinds. And obviously, it comes on him having all these other personality disorders, the dark triad of narcissism, of a complete lack of empathy, of constantly craving adulation and indulging in these megalomaniac fantasies. And of course, being president of the United States simply feeds his sick fantasies. Well, there we are. The good news is he won't come again, not for a state visit, because a state visit will happen once in the Queen's reign and once in the rule of another head of state. So she could visit President Trump. She will never visit him again. He will never visit the UK again for a state visit. Could be an ordinary visit, not a state visit. So that's that. So long, Trump.